I'm sorry, are you talking to me about the stupidest thing I ever did in pop music?
Well, that's not the stupidest thing you've ever done.
No, I was close to it though.
And then it's also my karaoke song.
Is it?
So when I go up through karaoke, the whole place goes, no, what's he going? Must be something miserable and soul-y and jazzy. And I go, you put the boom boom into my heart. I do a broad Scottish accent, and the place goes nuts.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus.
You've each got different selections. Going to start with you, Pat. And the first track on your list, I love this. Scritti Politti, Woodbees.
Well, you see, Scritti Politti before Woodbees was this kind of rickety indie band, and they brought out a song called The Sweetest Girl, which I could easily have chosen. But he has this creamy voice, and he has all these crazy 80s anti-Thatcherite lyrics. And then with Woodbees, he sort of stepped up and he worked with a New York guy called David Gamson. And I just thought it sounded like the funkiest, most modern, coolest thing I'd ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And it set a bar for what we were going to try to do. And it's funny, we're coming back to kind of using synthesizers for the next record, but I remember just thinking, this is what I want music to sound like if I ever make it. So you can't get more of a kind of recommendation than that.
The production on this is still super fresh, isn't it? When you hear it, you're like, it gives you that kind of swagger.
I know, it's kind of like robot dub. It's like as if some massive artificial intelligence has decided that it's going to make a soul record and sing about Aretha Franklin. He even sounds like he's been treated. His vocal has been treated, but I know that's not the case. He never does gigs, and he only ever sort of sings on record, and he only sings about once every 4 years, so he never wastes his voice. So I love Scritti Politti. I mean, I really do. I mean, it's kind of like if I want to cheer myself up, I'll listen to Scritti Politti Woodbees.
Do you know him? Have you hung out with him?
No, I've never hung out with him. I've only ever read copious interview after interview in the music press where he is the world's most pretentious man, which I also love, and uses polysyllabic French words and German words to describe 2 verses, a chorus, a middle eight and an end, So I love him to death. I love Green Gartside to death. Everything about him and everything about Scritti Politti I love to death.
Special's Ghost Town, Pat. So much to say about this record. It's such a pivotal record as well, isn't it?
Well, it was one of these records, a bit like Martha and the Vandellas dancing in the street when the kind of riots were happening in the late 60s in America. This song just completely clicked with a tough time in British society. So there were riots, and I think it was Tottenham or Handsworth, I can't remember, but anyway, there was lots of social unrest. And what I love about this is that it's not a strident song. It's a gentle song, and and it's evocative and it's mournful. It's more about loss than it is about anger, And we are post-punks. We call ourselves post-punks, but a punk is like 3 chords in the truth. A post-punk is all the chords in the truth, and a post-punk tries to make hit records out of all that, So this was the post-punk classic, and because it was so eclectic, it sounded like something from 1940, and then it sounded like something from Jamaican dub, and then it had Terry Hall in the middle of it being this kind of alienated, wailing white guy surrounded by Neville Staples and a multicultural, a brilliant representation of multicultural Britain. And I think it's one of the great records, and that's the kind of record I always look to inspire me, as a record that it does what it does, and then somehow it clicks with the zeitgeist, and then everybody has this collective experience. And so when everybody listens to Ghost Town, they think they have a complicated set of emotions that comes through them. So it's a bit like a great football event or a natural disaster or a great celebration. That's how I regard the Special's Ghost Town. When
Terry sadly passed away recently, there was an outpouring of grief, but every single person said what a wonderful person.
He had his troubles to bear, and he had his experiences that would have helped sent him down a kind of disastrous route, but he actually rose above it and transcended it, and was bigger than the people who were abusing him, basically, in his youth. So there's an awful lot of emotion wrapped up in the Specials, and I think it's because of that combination of just trying to make great records, but also trying to be relevant as a sort of constant inspiration for us.
And Pat, when this record came out, what was your life like? What were you doing?
Well, I was a student at Glasgow University,
Right.
doing English literature and language. So I was loving the fact that I was in at the time when relevant music like this was being made, because it wasn't all just the Temptations or Marvin Gaye or Stevie Wonder, that kind of soul revolution kind of mix. It was actually happening there right now. And then, of course, I was worried about being involved in the Falklands War a year later, so that the record I would put next to that would be Robert Wyatt and Elvis Costello's Shipbuilding, which is all about that. So it's just a great era and a directly inspirational era for us to make music. So all the templates were there for making great music with records like The Specials' Ghost Town.
Greg, we're going to go full on. We're going full on.
To the ridiculous.
We are going full on pop now. There's no hiding this, isn't it? I mean, please tell us this record. Tell us what it is. What have you picked?
So I've picked the fabulous George Michael with Wham and Wake Me Up Before You Go Go.
Which doesn't waste a second, does it? It's one of those.
We're going from the Specials Ghost to There's a few reasons. George Michael has a very high level of musicality. His bass player is a guy called Dion Estes. And if you listen to the bass playing in this, I remember as a kid listening to what the bass was doing in this and watching George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley do their thing, watching how the dance floor would react to it every time. I was mesmerised with this bass player. And then it's also my karaoke song.
Is it?
So when I go up to karaoke, the whole place goes, no, what's he going? Must be something miserable and soul-y and jazzy. And I go, you put the boom boom into my heart. I do it in a broad Scottish accent, and the place goes nuts. And then the first time I did it, and I don't take it that seriously, I kind of half speak it. And there's a wee karaoke woman afterwards finished that, oh son, there's no wonder your brother's the singer in the band. I was like, but I was just taking the mickey out of it a wee bit. And then we did a show at Wembley Stadium with Madonna, and afterwards we went up and George wanted to meet Pat, and Pat completely blanked him.
Oh my God.
And I said, Pat, don't blank George, what are you doing? And he just went, whatever.
Really?
Oh, I was like, Pat.
Oh, sorry, are you talking to me about the stupidest thing I ever did in pop music?
Well, that's not the stupidest thing you've ever done.
No, I was close to it though. Why did I blank George Michael? Because that's what you did in the late 80s.
Yes.
You sort of blanked people who you thought wanted to talk to you. You thought, nah, I don't want to talk to you.
He was all keen. He was like, oh, I want to talk to Pat.
It was like before everybody was a networker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had the biggest hit of the summer and he was dying to hang out with you.
We were post punks, so it was like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. Like
Play
that.
cool.
No, really, honestly. I mean, I can't. And the swear word that I want to say cannot be said.
Right.
So I won't say it.
So you regret that decision
I've
now?
moved on from that kind of behaviour. Let's just put it that way.
You seem so amiable now.
I'm a lovable man, but at that time I was a holy terror.
You definitely were.
I was inspired by. I wanted to be at the midpoint between Frank Sinatra and Malcolm McLaren.
Right. Okay.
So the whole idea is you would get in and you would sing beautiful songs, and then that would be the sugar pill, and then once you were in there, you would just cause ideological chaos.
Can I hear you?
You'd wreck the house.
Can I hear you sing? You put the boom boom into my heart.
Never.
Okay.
It ain't ever going to happen.
Go on.
No.
Collective, what's your tribute to George now? What kind of a guy?
He's a beautiful crooner. He's one of the great legato singers, popular singers. And I think also, actually, the greater stupidity is he was giving money to the miners' strike, and he was a great advocate for AIDS and sexual plurality and diversity. So I was an idiot. I mean, I'm a quadruple idiot for not being nice to George Michael when I had the chance. I mean, the height of stupidity.
Well, let's not labour it, but
or labour of love it.
Honestly, old hack.
Chaka Khan, I feel for you. Another one of these records, Pat, like a couple of your other suggestions, that kind of very futuristic when this song came out. Bit of a game changer as well.
Yeah, I mean, it fused rap. It had sort of scratching, and then in the midst of it, it had Chaka Khan, who just sort of sings as if she's sort of splitting the difference between Billie Holiday and Aretha Franklin, and she just sings whatever she wants to and manages to just about convey the chorus while doing her own jazzy doodlings while everybody else is trying to. And then Stevie Wonder's on harmonica halfway through. I mean, come on. The record sort of doesn't get any more superlative. And the connection to Hue and Cry, if I'm right, tell me if I'm right, is that there's a guy called Hawk Walensky who was the programmer of this record, who worked with us on. He was the guy who programmed this record, worked with us and programmed the drums for Looking for Linda.
Right.
You know, so we were when we were kind of making music in New York in the late 80s, early 90s, we had a list of references, and it was like, who did the drums on this? Go and get that person.
Yeah.
So I once went to see Chaka Khan in the Blue Note Cafe in New York in the mid 90s. She's a redoubtable woman, and she wore the tiniest miniskirt and just looked as if she could have eaten everybody in the room entirely alive, and sang like a bruised angel. So it was unbelievable.
What a talent as well. Just incredible.
No. I mean, it's if you listen to her singing on "Tell Me Something Good" by Rufus, you know, I mean, but this is the thing. It's my great love is this moment where all the stuff that was happening in the gospel church became soul and funk, and then was sort of communicated at a highly urgent time in the late 60s and the early 70s. People had a reason to sing so beautifully and play so beautifully because freedom was what they were expressing in the midst of oppression. And so it's like perfect. She's part of that sort of perfect moment for me, which kind of bookends at Songs in the Key of Life, 1976, Stevie Wonder, that sort of begins to become something else, hedonistic, like disco, but up to that point. And she's part of that. But she doesn't have to be political. She just has to do what she wants to do, and as a proud, strong black woman, and it's liberating.
Special things were going on in this record, weren't they? So many things coming into play that just made it so different.
It's like a map. It's like a map of music at that time. Was it mid 80s? Mid 80s?
Yeah,
or late
84.
84. I mean, it's just. I think I'm trying to remember. Arif Mardan, I think, was the producer of it, who was a great classic producer of classic soul records. So again, it's a kind of lesson. You know, you have these songs as kind of just standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say, and it's like, how many elements can we get in one song? Stevie Wonder, Chaka Khan rapping, synth drums, and it's a Prince track as well. Yes. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm quivering with excitement even as I list the basic elements of the song. You know,
we're men in our 50s now, so we try and keep our energy levels up. But we were young. So
how old were you?
2024 will be our 40th anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
So, and we'll still be in our 50s.
It's amazing.
So we're very lucky.
And we're
just in our 50s. But it was two young brothers living out of each other's pockets making the music. We made 3 albums in 3 years because our manager said, I don't know if these guys have got enough money to make any more albums, so just keep making albums. So we toured, we wrote, we recorded an awful lot. The first 5 years, we must have been
crammed it in there,
done after those 5 years. I just remember we don't have any excesses. We don't take drugs. We don't drink to excess. We don't do anything to excess.
No, we just use string sections to excess. That would be that.
Horn sections to
and horn sections
because there was no time to enjoy it. It was just there was our manager at the time just pushing us and saying, I don't know if these two. And the two guys that did sign us, they signed a band called the Spice Girls after us.
Yes, I remember that.
So they did okay, those guys.
They did okay.
And then after
from the Potato Boys to the Spice Girls.
So I've got nothing but fond memories of it. It was all a bit of a blur. I mean, it takes people like we meet DJs like you, and they remind us of things. You go, yeah, I remember that. And I remember I remember being in London. We're in London just now with you, and navigating your way through London, and being in and out of cars, and living out of a bag, living in these hotels with all these having breakfast, all these weird businessmen that seemed to be so miserable, and you would just have so much energy because that day you would go around every TV studio, every radio station. Radio tours. I bizarrely enjoyed radio tours. We used to get in the back of cars with these horrible radio promoters that would have. Well, they were so boring, those guys, and you just spend all day driving around radio stations.
To millions of radio stations answering the same question again and again and again.
But I like the quirk. I mean, some of it was very Alan Partridge. I mean, you can imagine. But it was so much fun. I still enjoyed doing that. I was tiring, though. You were tired at the end of the day.
Concorde was good.
Oh, we did Concorde.
Oh, wow.
Concorde was good. And meeting the air hostess on Concorde who confessed that she was a Led Zeppelin groupie, that was also interesting. And stealing the silver knives
really?
from the plate, that was also good. So yeah, I mean, and then realising that's just about as excessive as we were going to be in the 80s, and then everything else was downwards from there.
Pat, what's your thinking of Labour? You know, your big song. I mean, because it's interesting. When I said you were coming in this morning on air with Chris Evans, his face. I told you earlier. He said that is the definitive song of you know, the 80s.
Yeah.
When are you still in love with that song?
Well, it's a really interesting question. I'm in love with the music of it. I mean, again, we were just listening to all our favourite records, which was sometimes informed by things like the NME, you know, when they used to put the cassettes on the front of the NME, and they would do like a Latin cassette, and so it would just drop into your lap, all this amazing music. So Labour of Love is definitely sort of comes from that kind of Latin tradition. And then you're thinking, well, what are we going to sing about? You know, pineapples and love and moon and June. No, well, we are going to sing about love, but we're going to tie that into Withdraw My Labour of Love, which of course comes from sort of political movements. The song is actually, people think that it's a kind of pro-Labour song. It's actually about a working class Tory who is sort of falls out of illusion with the regime that he's voted for. You said you were going to be so tough and I loved it. Who loved you for pushing me around in totally new ways. Withdraw my labour of love, strike for the right to get into your heart, ain't going to work for you no more. So it kind of persists. There's a kind of thing about whether it's Brexit or whether it's, you know, lots of Tory governments, there's a thing about people voting against their own interests that seems to be a persistent aspect of our UK, remainder of the UK politics at the moment. Maybe Scotland, maybe Scotland and Wales are maybe slightly different, you know.
Yeah.
But so and we got that out as a very explicitly political record on the airwaves. Got our airplay.
It was everywhere, wasn't it?
So what's going on? And does it? I mean, I think my perspective is that rap has sort of taken over that role, and R&B and hip hop has sort of become the kind of truth tellers.
The social commentary.
Kendrick Lamar and these kind of people that are out telling stories about what you should know about, you know. But we picked that up, and there was bands like the Redskins just before us who were sort of trying to combine sort of Paul Weller, Style Council, you know. So there was lots of precedent for trying to sort of be a socially conscious, politically conscious singer. But I mean, I can't believe we got away with Labour of Love, to be quite honest with you. It's sort of, but it's head-scratchingly the case that we got away with it.
So you're really proud of that track?
Play it.
And the legacy.
Absolutely.
When I walk into a bar in Glasgow, they always play it just to annoy me. But I heard it the other day. Well, last week I was out with my family, and the DJ was a bit sort of fussing over me, and he played it. And everybody was kind of going, oh, actually, that's your song. But it still sounds good.
It does.
You know, it's only recorded in 16 tracks in Glasgow and New York. And I remember thinking, it was an odd track. I remember the first time watching people dance to it, and they used to go nuts to it, and I didn't quite understand why they were going nuts to it. But
I put my foot down. I said, there's no way that this quirky track will ever be a lead single from Hue and Cry, and I've never been allowed to chew any single. Since.
You're not allowed to pick them anymore.
I'm just not allowed in the room.
It's amazing, isn't it?
To get that, no way. That'll be a career destroyer. I thought it was too avant-garde, and I thought
you wanted to be avant-garde.
I know. But I also wanted a hit record. That's the contradiction of being a post-punk.
A brilliant answer, Pat.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I'm rather desperate myself.
You made it. So this is Prefab Sprout, Paddy McAloon, and the King of Rock and Roll. What is it? Hot Dog Jumping Frog Albuquerque. Oh man.
What's it mean, Greg?
I don't know. I mean, I love Paddy McAloon, his madness, but this was the sonic yardstick in the 80s. The music they made was, every time you would go and do a big gig, the sound engineers would be sound checking the PA with Prefab Sprout.
Why is that?
Just sonically, it was ahead of everybody else. So, and I remember when people come and tune speakers in a recording studio, it was Prefab Sprout.
Oh, how weird.
And it was just, I was drawn to it sonically, and plus we spent a lot of time in New York making our records in the 80s, and the New Yorkers hated them.
Really?
They had that song, Hey Manhattan Doobie Doo, that particularly they hated that. And I used to quite like the fact that they irked them so much. So I used to play Prefab Sprout quite a lot in the studio before we'd start our day, and they'd say, get them off! What a load of, what is it? Hey man, Ooby Doo. And I was like, Jumping Frogs, Albuquerque. Don't play that record. So I used to quite like the fact that it annoyed them so much. But it's just for the sound of it, Steve. I thought that whoever made those records. But the thing is, if you get a really good sounding record, there's a lot of factors. There's the state of the band when they played it. There's the state of the singer when he sang it or she sang it.
Yeah.
And it's the song and the arrangement and the chords. That all goes to making a good record. You can't just flick a switch or book the best studio or the best mixing engineer. There's so much more. It's quite a lot of, lightning in a bottle kind of aspect. But they seem to have it then. even you listen to them now, there's records that sound great. That's a timeless record. A lot of the Cure stuff is amazing. The Smiths records, if you listen to Smiths records, they still sound amazing. So people were taking care of business making these records.
How is it that some records have absolutely 100% stood the test of time? This doesn't sound jaded, faded, old hat, whatever.
There was so many. I mean, even Hue and Cry's Labour of Love, it doesn't seem to date, and it's all these different things, elements coming in, everybody being at the right time in the right place and in the right frame of mind. It's pure luck.
And also, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So at a certain stage in your career, you're just going to try things and you're going to jam things together, and you're immediately excited by the thrill of it. As you go along a wee bit, you sort of think, you know how to do it, but at a certain, you don't.
Really?
No, truly, you still don't. You think you do. But something, I mean, Prefab Sprout were just totally into themselves. I mean, I'd say that's an aspect of it as well, as a band that is just completely into its own world. And also, he's got his own lyrical world as well. So he exists in this kind of fantasy land with kind of icons and memes sort of floating around from Anglo-America and rock and roll in the past, and his own spiritual. I mean, that helps as well, because it's sort of like the semantic element of a song, which is there. That's why it's a song. That's why there's the lyric. Why is there the lyric? Because you're trying to kind of speak something that's not been spoken before. So I think he has. And also, I would also say as well, it's very air quotes, you're the king of rock and roll completely. You know, it's very ironic. That's why the Americans wouldn't have liked it, because it's classic art school British ironic pop, which is
kind of sarcastic,
letting you know that we know that this is a bit of a cliche. I mean, Americans just absolutely hate
They wouldn't have got it.
Particularly New Yorkers wasn't it?
No. Which is weird, because Andy Warhol was in their midst, who began that whole thing. So anyway.
So this final track on your list, Greg, we've changed, because you did go for Jamiroquai. We've changed it to Howard Jones, haven't we, to fit with the 80s vibe.
If JK's listening, says so, we've just spat out his wine going, what?
It's interesting, because you said, you picked a track, you picked Virgin Insanity from 96, and I was like, that's pushing the 80s plus
Sorry,
bit.
Jay.
Just slightly.
But I switched it to Howard Jones because I was listening. Bob Lepsis, who's an American music lawyer, did an in-depth interview with him, and it brought back so many memories of the 80s. Howard Jones' definitive 80s. And he worked hard for that. It wasn't handed to him, and it didn't happen to him until he was in his late 20s.
You told me the most amazing story earlier about, like him and his wife. I mean, could you want to tell me a bit about that?
They grew this fan base in their local area, in the local pubs they played. And then they were obviously on a shoestring trying to make it work. She was supportive of him. They had in a bad crash with the van, and she got trapped in the van. She survived, but the way he tells the story, I don't think it was a good time. And the money she got from insurance, she gave to him to buy the Roland Jupiter 8 synth, which is the iconic synth of the 80s. Yeah. Who now, if you put it into eBay now, it's £32,000 if you've got one. I think he's got 8 now or something like that. It's like, Howard's okay. But then how he built this huge following, and then when they were running 3 buses at one point. His wife was in charge of all the buses. So the record companies eventually come sniffing around. If you've built it's a very kind of new model of that, and he was doing it back then. You need to build your base. And then at the age of 29, 30, he started making this electronic music that the Musicians Union tried to get him banned because they thought he was taking work away from proper musicians. The Rolling Stone magazine were just destroyed him because they hated the fact that he could do it himself.
Yeah.
And he's making this, but he kept after having a hit after a hit after a hit. It wouldn't stop.
No.
And they're trying, everybody, it's
they're
so
all brilliant tracks as well, aren't they?
But this song, No One's to Blame, he loved this song. The record company kept shaking their heads. They couldn't do it. So he did a really clever thing where, I don't know whether it was after Live Aid, but he met Phil Collins. And he kind of approached Phil Collins and said, look, can you come play drums? Didn't know what he was going to play drums on. But it was this song that he was backing, and Phil Collins plays drums on it and sings on it. And because Phil Collins was massive at the time, it made the record company kind of, right, well, we should maybe take this to radio. And it was massive, this song. And it's him pushing for the song that he believed in. And I just love his story, and he tells it in such a great... We did a show with him not so long ago, and he was in great form, and it sounded great. He's got a real good crew with him, and his own admission, he's not the best singer. He was a reluctant front man. He didn't want to sing. He was always the
That's
keyboard player in the
amazing
band.
hearing that, isn't it?
And he admits it himself. So, but I think he sings his best in this. I think he sings as good as he can be in this. So, sorry, JK, it's Howard Jones.
Oh, Jay, and you know the amazing thing is he was here with his wife the other week, and they're just so like, you know, they were
quite
saying,
zany, aren't they? They're quite
40
floaty.
Oh, they're so
yeah.
into each other.
Yeah.
She was looking at him. She's over there looking at him, kind of doughy-eyed through the whole interview, and I just thought that's just so amazing, isn't
Was
it?
the guy with the chains? Something
You don't ruin it.
Pat, come on,
Sorry.
behave.
Oh, was he here though?
Was it? Did they still have him? Is he still in chains?
He was one of the fans that used to come in the buses, and Howard Jones used to say, I'm watching this guy every night dancing in front of me. No, you should see this guy. And that's why he brought him up onto the stage.
Oh, okay.
He was one of the punters used to go in the buses.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Wow.
He'd have to keep himself spry if he was going to keep doing it, you know, like, you know, Pilates and stuff.
I don't know.
All that leaping about.
He was a fit guy.
Okay.
If you guys ever wanted to come in and do a show and present your own show together, you would be amazing. I could sit and listen to 2 more hours, maybe over a couple of pints or whatever.
That might help. Alcohol might help.
Can we have stingers and jingles?
Of course you can.
Hue and Cry.
There you go. You have to sing them. That's
Yes.
the
Yeah.
stipulation.
You can
I would love to do that. We can put the cartridges into the thing and press play.
And get it wrong.
Yeah.
But it's been
have to
amazing
deal with
hanging
dead
out
air.
with you two this week. And if you ever fancy coming back, please say
Yes,
yes.
now we
We'd
know
love
where
to
you
have
are. We eventually found it. We didn't
Yeah.
really realise he'd got to go up the escalator.
Left at the Shard. We'll get you.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll always be here waiting for you. Pat, Greg, thank you so much. Lovely
Thank
to
you,
meet
mate.
you both.
Thanks
Thank
for-
you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us. Thanks for having us.